This is IRG's Health Talk. Back to Tom Hutler and Shannon O'Kelly.
All right, our first guest today, Dr. Lisa Stubbs, a senior investigator at the Pacific Northwest Research Institute in Seattle, talking about her study on how genetics influence stress responses and how stress affects the brain. I'm looking forward to hearing from her, Shannon. This sounds very intriguing.
Oh, this is intriguing for sure, Tom. You know, we are learning so much about the brain. The brain is such a powerful tool and, just an amazing part of our body. And I think we just need to learn to appreciate all the effects on mental health. And we're seeing that so much right now in today's world with all the challenges we've all faced.
Here's Shannon O'Kelly and Dr. Lisa Stubbs.
Dr. Stubbs, welcome to Health Talk. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Boy, I'm excited to talk to you. Holy smokes. I was looking at your bio. Man, you are in deep in genetics and research. And tell us about your practice, your job, your interest, your background. I want to know about Dr. Lisa Stubbs. Give me the background here.
So I was born in Tacoma, Washington. Born in Tacoma General Hospital, and I grew up in Tacoma and even went to college in Tacoma. I went to the University of Puget Sound. Early in my life, I got very interested in biology, but in those days, I had never met a biologist, and I didn't know what biology was. I thought we were all going to be walking around collecting biological specimens. But I went to college at the University of Puget Sound and started doing biology and was particularly influenced by some of my professors who led me in the direction of genetics and molecular biology, which was really kind of blossoming at the time. And it got me going in the direction that I'm in now. I did my PhD at the University of California, San Diego, and then went off to Europe and spent some time elsewhere in the country building my career in genetics. And before I came back home to Seattle, I was a professor of biology, cell and developmental biology at the University of Illinois for several years, and decided I wanted to come home and had this great opportunity to come to PNRI. So here I am, still carrying on the research that I've been building over the years.
Yeah, let's talk about that research. What a background. I got to tell you, I'm a biology major also, and I remember taking a genetics class as an undergrad, and I was like, whoa, a little bit over my head here, but I mean, tell us what you're doing, what your focus, what your research is. Let's get into that.
So my general program really focuses on brain development and how individual brains develop differently and how that's dependent on genetics. The thing that I'm really focused on now that I'm at PNRI that is kind of a new thing for us, and I kind of want to emphasize, is this work that came out of some work I was doing in the University of Illinois with my colleagues there that has to do with how individual brains respond to stress. And it just seems like it's a very poignant point, especially now in our lives, that there's a lot of stressors, a lot of insecurities, worries about health, worries about financial security, concerns about children and the future, etc. Isolation is really a big stressor. And so that's my interest, is how do we individually internalize and handle stress, and how does it in turn affect our health?
Are you looking at it from a standpoint of genetic development, like in utero? I mean, the brain developing? Or are you looking at it from the genetic changes based on life experiences?
Both things. So we're all born with a kind of unique brain that is dependent a lot on our genetics. And my brain is not exactly structured the same as yours, and it has different susceptibilities and strengths. And we all know that. I come from a family of 5, and we're also different in our capabilities and the things that bother us, or the things that are fine for us, the things that are special strengths and talents and so forth. We've been that way since we were babies. we came out differently. And that has to do with the fact that your genes are controlling how your brain is built in the first place. What happens is that over your life experience, your brain gets remodeled. So the brain doesn't stop developing. Even into adulthood, our brains are still rebuilding themselves based on our experience. So you start with something that you were genetically born with, and then your experience works with that to either enhance it or to overcome it, or you can train yourself to overcome susceptibilities, or you can enhance them by living a stressful life, for example. So we each have something that we're born with, and we build on that with our experience. And so this is kind of the classic example of genetics and environment working together.
More with Dr. Stubbs and Shannon O'Kelly next on Como.
It's a Northwest Lifestyle Weekend on Como News. IRG's Health Talk continues.
We continue our conversation with Dr. Lisa Stubbs and Shannon O'Kelly.
Dr. Lisa Stubbs, a geneticist at Pacific Northwest Research Institute. Again, thank you for joining us. Fascinating stuff. We're talking about brain development, and as the brain continues to develop, maybe some effects that stress has on that development process. You know, if you're finding these genetic influences and differences in brain handling stress, for example, what can you do? What is the intervention? What are you learning? I mean, how's this going to help us?
Okay, first let's just talk about how it works. The brain plays a central role in both how you perceive stress and how you respond to it. So in a simplified form, the stress signal comes in through your sensory system, so sight, sound, smell, touch, and then the brain puts that all together to generate a feeling of threat or anxiety. And then this gets passed on to a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which specializes in secreting stress-related hormones. And it does it throughout the body and the rest of the brain. So this thing is just sending out these little drugs all over your body that control everything you can imagine, from your blood pressure to your heart rate, glucose metabolism, to your eating behavior. And also it controls your mood, anger, defensiveness, insecurity, or alternatively, confidence, comfort, and calm. So once the stress response gets established and puts you into that threat mode, you get this SOS signal that goes out throughout your whole body. And that can feed back to reinforce the stress response in the brain. So the brain is sort of a central regulator of all of this. And the thing is that cycle of I'm under threat, I need to respond, is actually very healthy. But if you activate it over and over again, if you activate it inappropriately, then it starts doing damage to the organs that it's designed to contact. We all respond to stress differently, and that's because there is a genetic component. We all differ in where in that process we have susceptibilities. Where in that pathway are we susceptible? And anywhere you interrupt it, you end up with the same sort of health problems. Your organs get overstressed, and a really common health problem is diabetes and obesity. But if you end up with obesity because you're under stress, you end up overeating, for example, going on a diet isn't going to solve your problems, right?
Yeah.
The problems are coming from this cycle, and where in the pathway you have a problem is not necessarily evident from any kind of medical test you can do. Your genetics can tell us where in that pathway you might be specially sensitive. And that can help to design treatments. Don't just treat the symptoms, let's treat the part in the pathway that's really sensitive. Doctors can think of ways to design interventions that are tailored really to you and your specific susceptibilities and sensitivities. And so that's our goal, is to understand the mechanisms of these pathways, to find out where the sensitive parts are so that they can go back and be addressed individually.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, I've got so many questions. I mean, Dr. Stubbs, I need to have you come back. That was fantastic. Will you come back and we can dive down a little bit? I've got, like I said, so many questions. I love this stuff. So let's have you back. But thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Dr. Lisa Stubbs, Senior Investigator at the Pacific Northwest Research Institute, how stress affects the brain. More information you can get by going to pnri.org. Shannon, as we mentioned, this is an intriguing topic, and we're still learning about the brain, aren't we, all these years later?
Oh, yeah, you got to ask the question, why do some people just live and thrive on stress? Why do people not do well with stress? I mean, what's going on there? Is it genetics? Is it environment? And Dr. Stubbs is looking into that. I think it's fascinating stuff, Tom.